we're given one life, and it's a nanosecond.
Have you personally dealt with mental health issues?
What are schools currently doing, and how could schools improve care for a mental crisis?
Do you think that living in a tourist destination like Taos has an impact on mental health?
What is the connection between physical health and mental health?
How does your mental health affect others?
Do you have people you can rely on and trust in mental health crisis?
I know that I could have done a lot better in school, and I know that part of it was just me having a hard time getting out of that depressive rut, because obviously being homeless since you're 14 does a lot to you mentally.
Last year I was in a pretty bad place with my mind, and like school was really troublesome, and I did hurt myself quite a few times. I got a pencil sharpener and I like broke it open and like used the pencil sharpener razor and like cut myself with it. I was suffering from depression and anxiety, really bad anxiety. And I remember the date clearly enough that it lasted with me this whole time and makes me scared of the number, or the date, 24. Because on January 24th, 2022, I wanted to take my own life. I wasn't doing the best, and I felt like I needed help, but I didn't get it because in our community, and especially with our families, it's a bit more just, you either deal with it on your own or you're weak.
I have eczema and I had a bad infection and it just flared up. It was all over my face and my neck and my body, and it just didn't look like me. It just looked like a monster, honestly.
I don't feel safe in my community. I don't feel right. I feel like I will not be heard through things that are meant to go on. And I'm very sad for my community because it's failing on its culture. They're changing things that we haven't changed for the last 100 years. Women on the Pueblo are not heard. Whenever there is something going on, the men are meant to choose it. Whenever there's something that's important enough for everyone in the community to choose, women are not allowed to choose.
If I want to do certain things, like if I want to get a nose piercing or dye my hair or something, he's like, no, like you're native, you can't do that to yourself. And I don't know, it makes me feel trapped because I can't do what I want to do to myself, Like I've always felt different in my own skin. Like, you can, like, see these other people wearing, like, anything they want without, like, being, like, conscious and stuff. And, oh, are they looking at me weird? Are they, like, So that's why I try to stick with, like, long sleeves, pants. And in the summer, I try to stick with pants and stuff. And, like, I want to wear shorts. And, like, I see people, like, dressed the way they are, and they ask me, like, aren't you hot? And, like, I am, but I just tell them I'm not because I don't want them to know why.
Elementary school was not the greatest of times. Kind of got just, belittled by people, oh, look, there's, the fat kid, stuff like that. It was just kind of the sense that, like, no one's gonna pick me to, for dodgeball. No one's picking me for capture the flag. So you feel left out for me personally, if you're the bigger guy. You don't want to go to school. You don't feel like you want to go to school at all. You just want to stay home and not be around anybody.
When I was first starting out on TikTok, one of my videos went viral. I think like 3 million views or something huge. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. Until the comments come in. I turned off comments now, but I think I had 500,000 comments on it. And most of them were making fun of how I looked and how whatever I was doing was like disgusting or horrible. I make costumes. I was in a fully clothed costume. They mainly hated me just because I'm a heavy-set female. People absolutely hate that on the internet. If you're not skinny or naturally this beauty standard or a male, they look down upon that.
I absolutely think that our generation is addicted to screens. I'm aware that I'm addicted to my screen, and I'm doing my best to try to get better with my phone addiction, but it's really, really difficult. And I'm sure that many of my peers can relate to that.
When I'm hanging out with my friends, sometimes if that's in town or if it's, in the mountains at the river, our phones still play a big part. And it's this need to be on them. And even when you're spending time with your friends, you aren't connecting and you aren't talking because you both are just on your phones or, not even engaging in any social interaction. And even if you're around people, you're not paying attention to them and you're not paying attention to anything but your screen.
On social media, there's so many things and standards that you're told that you should do. Like you have to look a certain way or you have to do something. And I think it can be really toxic, especially because you can't really decipher what's real and what's fake on social media with filters and Photoshop, and trying to achieve an unachievable goal in these beauty standards that are not possible can be really demeaning. And in my community, I've personally seen people develop horrible mental illnesses or eating disorders even just from this horrible comparison. Even just putting photos of edited models and filters can lead to a lot of pressure to look a certain way. I feel like there's always been this glamorization of eating disorders and thinness.
Everybody has an addiction, and I think technology, because it's so accessible, because phones are so accessible, it's in your pocket, they're super user-friendly, right? Maybe too user-friendly, they're so accessible.
I definitely think that our generation is addicted to screens. I think if you have a screen, you're addicted to it, and I think we just need to name it so that we can deal with it like all other addictions, like gambling and alcohol and all that stuff.
I think technology has exposed our youth to a lot of the world outside of Taos that some of our elders and some of our older generations and even parents, even a younger parent like myself, just isn't quite ready to have those discussions or even knowledgeable about things that kids have been exposed to.
When you isolate yourself, you go through things alone. And when you go through things alone, it doesn't make anything better. It makes those things a lot harder. And so having a connection with your peers makes it so much easier to reach out when you do need help. But with our phones, we do isolate and we get drawn into this tiny little digital capsule, and it takes away our time, it takes away our connection, and it takes away our relationships.
I didn't have to worry about somebody recording me. I didn't have to worry about if I'm posting, how many likes I'm getting. I didn't have a computer on my person 24 hours a day. I wasn't thinking I'm not tall enough, pretty enough, skinny enough, strong enough, smart, whatever you want to fill in with the enough. The intensity of the things that they're going through now seems magnified. The amount, right, of episodes or instances that come up, I think have maybe been increased given social media, given how sometimes classrooms are not as engaging as they need to be. Teachers are very overworked. Lots of times we can easily say, teachers don't care, parents don't care, kids don't care. All of those three bodies care a ton. They're just dealing with a lot of things that can pull their attention, pull their stress, and therefore, I feel like everyone's just really trying to cope.
Have you personally dealt with mental health issues? If so, care to elaborate? Yes, I have experienced my own mental health issues, and that's what's kind of promoted me in the position that I am, to be an advocate for my students. I grew up in a rough childhood. There was a lot of drug abuse, a lot of physical abuse, and there was a lot of lack of resources, especially in the school age times.
If you wanted my opinion about, education, schools were not built for all kids to thrive. Schools were built to create workers, right? If you go back in the history of school, it wasn't built for what we need, what we've been needing. It wasn't built for everyone. Schools were built for a very small population. Do we need to think about school differently? Absolutely. I wrestle with this every day with very smart, thoughtful leaders and teachers. How do we best support students? It's very hard to be able to make change. There's a lot of things going on that we typically don't think about. You want to change those texts? There's a lot of money coming through for that particular company. Some teachers are scared to teach certain texts because they're going to get fired. That's insane. They already have one of the hardest jobs on the planet. They get paid nothing. They have to plan, be ready, be a social worker, be a parent, be a friend, be a cheerleader, be excellent at their content. They have to do all these things at once, and now they have to worry about, I might get canceled or fired if I teach this book.
I did an activity where we were making memes, and even getting that across to students is a challenge because they just don't want to be here. They just don't want to be in school. They don't want to be learning. By the time they're 16 or 17, they've also already got a taste of adult life. They have a part-time job. They know what it feels like to make money and not have to learn to do that.
I think that in the past, we really didn't utilize the resources out there, and now it's coming to the surface, and I don't believe there's any one person out there that really understands how to really take care of themselves alone. We are definitely, we're not in this alone, but sometimes it can feel that way.
As a clinician and as an agency at Taos Behavioral Health, what we do is we provide an open communication. So when we identify, or the schools identify that there is a kid in crisis, what happens is we're able to talk with the kids, and we do what's called a Columbia Suicide Rating Scale, which gives us a really good idea. We ask a bunch of really open questions like, how often do you feel like you want to die? What kind of things do you think about or fantasize about? How do you want to end your life? Things like that. Those really hard questions that people don't like to ask. Those are scary. Nobody wants to hear the answers to those questions.
Cooper was a very excitable, athletic, smart, funny, a good all-round, sweet, sensitive person. I said, hey, Coop, what's going on? I'm here for you. Let me help you, please talk. And he just took off and started to run. And of course, there was no way I could catch him. He had been, for the year and a half, completely sober and working out and very strong, very healthy. I am running on the bridge, trying to stop cars, get help. And eventually he gets to the second little outlet, and Dowdy and Keon pulled up in that moment, and Cooper jumped over the railing, was holding on. He took off his hat and his necklace and threw it at Keon, and then just as he let go, Keon got hold of his hand. And that was it. So in that moment, it was pretty traumatic, pretty shocking. I couldn't really believe what I had just been through. There's also an in-the-moment impulse, I think, with some people with suicide. I feel that was an impulsive moment in Cooper's life. And had we been able to stop him by potentially the railings on the bridge being higher, we could have grabbed his feet. It could have given us a second. That could have led to a minute. That could have led to a lifetime. And statistics say that 94% of the people who are rescued before jumping from a bridge go on to lead normal lives. I forgave Cooper, and that was my mantra, I would say, because it was the only way I felt that we could move forward, is with forgiveness.
I believe that we're seeing more occurrences where students could be harming themselves and in different ways. You've seen increase in suicide, awareness of suicide, not even just at the high school age, young people in general that are losing their lives and at a very young age.
You have to be in at least a neutral mental health state to be able to access an open, creative mind. And without that, it's a struggle. And there's kind of no easy way to express that struggle.
I wasn't really taught how to show my emotions in a healthy way, other than write them down, which I didn't like. And I still don't like doing that, so.
I feel like a lot of the teachers aren't very tolerant, and I feel like they aren't really empathetic to a lot of problems. Like during the time that I was homeless in high school, I had a lot of teachers who told me that their class was more important than me not having a house, which obviously that's not right. Like obviously me having a roof over my head is a lot more important, but a lot of the teachers don't see that.
There wasn't any outside contractors and very minimal inside support inside the schools for a student like myself to reach out and really get that support. So I struggled a lot through high school and into young adult life until I really started to focus on the importance of my mental health. Once I paid attention to my mental health, my world opened up, and I then realized how much I was holding myself back by living in my trauma.
I feel like most kids from the Pueblo, they don't grow up in like families. Some of them, like most of them, grow up in broken families, and they're not able to like get help because they're shut down.
We went to the hospital one time. I kind of let out a cry for help, and I wrote a note saying, "Please, I need help, and I just don't feel safe with myself." And I gave it to one of the nurses there, and they like had me go into a room, and like I had to stay there for like 7 hours, but then they let me go. Yeah.
If people feel seen, heard, and safe, and I use safe can mean different things to different people, in their environment, their ability to thrive with their mental health, to be vulnerable about their mental health, certainly increases. If you don't have those things, it's a more hostile environment for you. And when I say seen and heard, I don't mean that everybody agrees with you. Most people equate feeling seen and heard as that person says what I'm saying is right, or they agree with me. That's not what being seen and heard, I don't think truly means. It means that somebody gives you the space to articulate how it is that you're feeling, how you see the world, what's important to you, and then follows up with what they heard, and then asks you questions to better understand.
Do you think that living in a tourist destination like Taos has an impact on mental health? Yes, absolutely, again, without question. Before I transitioned into teaching, I used to work in the tourism industry in our community, and the stark difference between working in our community with people that live here and working in our community with people that visit here. The tourists all come here and visit and feel like almost like Disneyland, right? It's all, look at all this happy stuff that we're doing and it's all so great. And they all glorify going to visit a bridge that I have had kids that I worked with jump off of. Like, it's heart-wrenching. And I don't see a connect between what they come here and see and what we experience as people that live here.
You know, when you're living in a place that has so much tourists, you are seeing it every single day. You're seeing people who are out there having the time of their lives, they're partying all the time, they're always spending a bunch of money on all these restaurants. And, you know, the town basically just revolves around tourism. We have a lot of restaurants, but nothing that the locals can afford. We have the ski valley, but mainly it's just tourists that go there. We have the Pueblo, but aside from the people who actually live in the Pueblo, it's mainly just tourists over there. So we're exposed to those things all the time, and it's having such a negative effect on our mental health because they're constantly partying, and then they're engaging in these risky behaviors, and then it's making them depressed because they don't know how to function without all these things.
I didn't realize that like parties or like people drinking a lot or doing like drugs, like I didn't realize that wasn't like a normal thing until I went to Colorado for the first time, and I went, oh, so this is what it feels like to have a normal town.
I grew up in Taos, and I see this isn't the town that I once grew up in. I see there's a lot of changes, a lot of progression in Taos, which is great for economics. But there's a lot of lack of resources for the youth and teens within our community. A lot of the money is being spent to attract more tourists to the town and not spending it on the community. The community is our future, and our community aren't tourists. And if they're tourists for a different destination and not for our hometown.
When I came here and the pandemic hit, everything just fell apart. And I became the biggest hypocrite I ever knew. You know, I was like, I love mountain biking. I love it. I love doing all these things that, you know, were so great for my mental health. But then I just didn't do them. I just was like, for some reason, not doing it. I don't know why to this day. You know, only until recently when I started just like, you know, okay, Kyle, it's time to get out there. It's time to enjoy why so many people come to Taos. That's when I realized it can be very beneficial to live in a place like Taos. But it's only working for you when you use what's, you know, there. I think a lot of people just forget what's at their front door, and they're too busy scrolling away that they forget to look up and see what they have out their windows.
In extreme cases, I had a really hard time with self-harm. I struggled with it for a pretty long time, and my therapist helped me get through that. But these days, I kind of just do things that make me feel happy until I'm in a better headspace to fully process what I'm going through.
We need to let kids or teenagers, young adults, like speak their mind and like don't interrupt them and like just let them talk.
I think it's very important for teenagers to have an outlet because we have a bunch of energy and we have a bunch of emotions. I think more things targeted towards the youth would be incredibly great. Like we have, like parks would be nice, or I really think I really think just more events targeted toward the youth, something that we can get our mind off of, like, what are we dealing with? School, home life. Those two things can be very, very daunting.
I will say the one thing that was a big negative and I guess a big drawback of homeschool, world school, and all that stuff was the amount of loneliness. You know, I'm in a family of 6, right, including me. But I came from school and I had this intense desire to be around other people, to, you know, have friendships and all that. But I never really had any friendships when I was growing up in homeschool.
There's never really a quick fix answer to mental health issues, but just starting to dive into that and creating that safe place for kids to start exploring their own mental health, being open to understanding that mental health plays a big part in these teens functioning. And if they can't function or feel safe within their own skin, how can they do academics?
And being in a place for 6 to 7 months or half a year, it can really have a toll on you for your physical illnesses or physical health. It can really affect you terribly.
When you're talking about self-harm, typically you're just thinking about, you know, physical self-harm, like, you know, cutting yourself and things of that nature. But there are a lot of different types of self-harm that aren't really talked about, like self-sabotaging behavior. I used to be really mean to a lot of the people around me because I didn't want them to get close and I didn't want them to like realize all of the things that I was going through because I was embarrassed. You know, for so long I thought it was really normal, but the moment that I realized that it wasn't normal, I just didn't want people to realize that I wasn't normal, even though looking back on it, it was pretty obvious.
I wasn't very close with my sister growing up, but there's somehow, like, I feel like she's been there, like, my whole life, and I can just go to her for anything. And she knows what I'm going through with my mom because, or, like, with, like, my situation at home, she knows because she went through it also. I've gone out of the house for a couple weeks before, and, like, I didn't know where to go, but my sister was there for me. And that's why I go to her the most, because she's just there.
How does physical illness affect your mental? It affects it a lot. For someone like myself with type 1 diabetes, and I've had that my whole life, I have really bad, like, mental image of myself, because, like, I think of myself as either being too skinny or being too fat, and it's just because, like, for diabetes, you have to carb count everything you're eating, so that way your number doesn't go really high or really low. You have to carb count all of that.
I have a lot of fear for what they're dealing with, and it's almost like they don't know what they don't know. And they really don't know how much more challenging adult life can get. And it's like they have so many struggles, and those struggles are valid. Like what they see online, what they deal with their peers, what those issues are at home, those are valid reasons to feel stress and to feel negative mental health impacts, right? However those manifest. What I don't see is how they also recognize that, like, they're gonna have to continue to deal with these things. The language I have for it is frustration tolerance. I don't see students with a high level of frustration tolerance, and that grit is the sort of thing that can carry people through hard times in life.
Something external can very easily affect my internal mood and what I want to do. And it can be pretty rough, actually, these past couple months, you know. Anything between family members and relationships, it can, if something goes wrong in, like, your personal relationship, that's gonna affect everything else I do for the rest of the day, at least.
I always like to say, and this is something that I learned from my therapist, is that you are a product of your environment. So if you are in a toxic household, then, you know, eventually you may become toxic and abusive yourself. You learn those behaviors.
What I've recognized with teens is if we take a step back and let them be their own professionals in their life and take the wheel, they have the good ideas. They have the right ideas. They just don't have the right person that's listening to their ideas.
For the past couple of years, I think I have come up with some okay methods. I wouldn't recommend anything I do personally, because my answer is just work harder. It's a very unhealthy mindset, I think, because burnout is a thing. And I have, of course, I have experienced burnout, and it just really low, it makes you really sad, and it makes you not want to do anything anymore. But I know, I take a break, I talk to my friends, and then I'm back into it.
If parents had a better understanding of how kids felt and were actually wanting to participate in what they're trying to say to them, I feel like it would run a lot smoother, because that's what a lot of teenagers have to go through with parents. And sometimes parents, they're just like, I was your age and like this and that. But then again, we're in a whole different generation than what they grew up in and how their parents raised them.
I know some people would definitely thrive in like art classes or like theater or like band or whatever. Like I know people would be into that, and I know it'd bring them out of like a depressive episode, and I know it'd like severely help them. It'd give them something else to think about other than, oh my God, I'm terrified of graduating high school. I'm scared to be an adult and I'm scared to graduate high school.
To deal with it in a positive manner, it means I can let it out instead of bottling it in and keeping in. To where if I keep it in, it's gonna start affecting me. It's gonna make me think negatively about myself. It's gonna make me feel sad, depressed.
So I have some healthy ways and unhealthy ways to cope. Some of the unhealthy ways were when I self-harmed and when I like ran away. More of the healthy ones though are like taking deep breaths, talking to people like my friends, just like watching a show. It gets me distracted and it helps a lot.
Just helped myself with, well, I mostly just walked outside, rode my bike, and went around and helped people that I felt needed help, and it helped me.
I'd like more access to like counseling or people you can talk to, like actual professionals to help us through. Like my school, we don't even have a counselor. God forbid we have a nurse that comes to our school once a week for 2 hours.
Services that I would like to implement in a teen center, if you may, would be comprehensive community support services, because we can support in a lot of different domains in life. I specialize in 5 domains. That's education, recreation, socialization, work, and home.
So we have 2 different programs here. We have a clinical program where we have therapists, and the therapists see people and children individually or in group settings. We also have our CCSS program, which is comprehensive community support services. And that's run by individuals that have been trained to support and do like this whole wraparound service, supporting with independent living skills, education, social, emotional, recreation, and job placement. So that's really another way that we help support our community.
Teachers being able to create space, knowing that they have the permission to create space, that they can check in on students, that they can affirm students, their interests. I see you're upset. And also that these little micro moments are not being lost, and we're jumping on them and then hopefully making them more macro so that kids could get what they need. Your mental health can affect other people when you do not communicate your mental health needs. That is assuming you know what your needs are. If you do know what they are, communicating them to yourself, acknowledging them to yourself, and then communicating them to the folks around you.
I had to basically slap myself across the face to remember that I have people. If I can't live for myself, I wanted to live for somebody else. Just know that they know, and they want to help you, and let help happen.